Hi, I'm Marta Williams, author, animal communicator, and biologist. I wanted to give you some of my insight today into what I perceive as some myths and misconceptions in the field of animal communication. One is the idea that only gifted people can do this. My experience, and I've taught thousands and thousands of people at this point, is that everyone can learn if they have a desire, they're willing to practice, and they're open to it. Anybody can learn this because everybody has the innate ability to do it. We just don't know it. And our culture tells us it's not possible and only gifted people can do it, or our culture tells us it's crazy and stupid, so we have a, kind of a block right there about learning it. But everybody can learn it. There's also a myth that it's really hard to learn, and it's not hard to learn if you have good technique. So I spent 30 years developing techniques that can help people get through blocks and barriers really quickly so that they can start doing this right away and prove to themselves that it's real. So let's talk about proving it. Rupert Sheldrake, who's another scientist who's involved in this field to some extent, studying intuition, says that whenever you publicize anecdotes, they become data. And there's so many publicized anecdotes about animal communication at this point that there's really overwhelming data, and much of it comes in the form of information people got that they could not have known. If you get something that there's no way you could have known it, let's say you're talking to a dog you don't know, and you're using just a description, not a picture, and the dog's not there, so you're not cold reading. There's no cues to tell you anything except what kind of dog it is, and let's say it's a mutt, okay? And you get from the dog, oh, I like to go in water, and you say, oh, really? Well, what do you do? Where do you go? And you get intuitively either pictures or words or a feeling that the dog goes to a lake with this little white fluffy dog who's his best friend. The little white fluffy dog doesn't swim, but the dog goes and swims, and he chases sticks and swims in the lake and has a great time. You go back to the person and say, here's what I got about your dog. Is that right? And the person goes, oh my God, wow, how did you know that? Precisely. Why would you have guessed that? You wouldn't. How would you know that? The only way you would know is because you connected intuitively. Now, this is also called remote viewing, what Russell Targ, the physicist, started in Stanford University in the 70s. And they were able to see, where did a plane crash that nobody could find? Or what's happened to this person who's been kidnapped, international kidnappings, things like that. They actually were able to remote view and draw pictures that they saw in their mind of Russia's military and missile bases. And after the Cold War, they went and found those. Now, Russell has a book called Miracles of the Mind, and he talks about this in that book. You might want to read it. Another myth is that you have to do all these things to be able to do this well, like don't eat sugar and, you don't want to be a drug addict. That probably won't work. But after that, I think the rules to me are not relevant, and you don't have to meditate for hours and hours to be able to do this. I teach people to do it right off the bat, right off the top of their head. That's actually how intuition works the best. Another myth that some people have, I call it the tautology virus, is that if they get something, it's right. And I'm like, no. If you get something, you go find out if it's right. You don't decide it's right. So if you get something about an animal, let's say with a lost animal, I do a lot of lost animals, and I go, here's what I'm getting. I have no idea if it's right. Let's go see if what I told you to do, the road I told you to go check, the area, the direction, the things to look for. Let's see if that's right. Like I just worked with a cat, and I said, I see a house that has blue aqua paint and white shingles. And it turned out that her animal was in her neighbor's house that had aqua paint and white shingles. So there you go. How would I know that, and why would I make it up? Okay. So if you get it and it's correct, corroborated, but you can't just say, oh, I know your animal's okay and there's nothing wrong, don't worry about it. How do you know that? You don't. So you would never tell people that, you know. Another myth that I heard recently is that idea that you cannot ever see your animal again in this lifetime once they die. So back up to the whole thing about reincarnation. We don't know if that's true. We can't prove that's true. So it's just if you believe in it. And in my book, Beyond Words, I wrote a lot about how people had experiences where their animals came back and did behaviors where they believed their animals were back because of behaviors that the new animal did. So it was pretty compelling, but not proof. Just really compelling, okay? You believe it or you don't, but how can somebody say, oh, by the way, you never get to see your animal again in this lifetime? I'm like, so how would you know that? You know, so that's just like patently false. The only way we're going to know anything about reincarnation is when we die, and then we won't be able to come back and tell anybody. So, you know, it's one of those. Another myth is that animals can't communicate intuitively as well as people. I'm like, really? Just, they're the masters at this. They're the ones who can tell when the earthquakes are coming. They're the ones who know if somebody's a good person or a bad person, and they'll, the erstwhile nice dog will start to go growl and go crazy about some person, and you find out the person is not a good apple. Animals are masters at this. So to say that they are limited is just part of what science does to animals and nature. The scientific community and straight science or mainstream science says animals don't feel, animals can't perceive color. Well, all of these things have been challenged and basically proven wrong. And some scientists have revised their stance, but many of them still maintain that stance. And it's just what would be called hidebound. You know, they can't change, they can't adjust and look at the facts and change. So there you go. But I always say, so some people will say animals only communicate in pictures, you have to send them pictures. That's not true. You can talk out loud to an animal, you can send a feeling, you can send a mental image, you can send thoughts. It doesn't matter what you do. Animals are masters at this, and they'll receive. And it doesn't matter how far away you are. So those are some of the really cool things about this field, which is why I said, well, this is the new science. This is a frontier of science, and that's why I have devoted almost 30 years to this. So if you want to find out more, you can read one of my 4 books, and they're on my website, martawilliams.com. You can also, if timing's right, I'm doing a 1-week intensive training at the end of April 27th through May 1st, 2018. And if you would like to come to that training, you can learn everything I know in a week. So it's quite a wonderful experience, and will really get you up to speed in this whole field. Okay, thank you. Hope you enjoyed this.